Standard motorcycle. This is the most common type you'll see on the road, and for good reason. It doesn't lean too far in any direction, not too sporty, not too laid back, not too specialized. The riding position is upright and comfortable. The engine size is manageable, and the weight feels balanced. These bikes are often the first serious motorcycle someone buys after getting their license because they're forgiving without feeling boring. Brands like Honda, Kawasaki, and Yamaha have all built their reputations partly on standard bikes. The Honda CB series is a good example. Decades of production, millions of riders, and a design that simply works. Sport motorcycle, built around one idea: performance. Everything on a sport bike is designed to go fast, corner hard, and respond instantly. The rider leans forward over the tank, weight shifted toward the front wheel, which helps with control at high speeds, but can feel uncomfortable on a long commute. The engines are tuned for power across a wide rev range, and the suspension is stiff and precise. Bikes like the Yamaha R6, the Honda CBR series, and the Kawasaki Ninja line all fall into this category. Sport bikes trace their DNA directly to racing machines, and many of their technologies, like advanced braking systems and aerodynamic fairings, started on the racetrack before making their way to public roads. Cruiser. This type of motorcycle is built around a relaxed, laid-back riding experience. The seat sits low, the foot pegs push your legs forward, and your hands reach out to wide handlebars in a posture that feels more like sitting in a chair than crouching over a machine. Cruisers are deeply associated with American motorcycle culture, and Harley-Davidson is the name most people think of first. But the style goes well beyond one brand. Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki all produce strong cruiser lineups. The engines on cruisers are typically large displacement V-twins that produce a heavy, rhythmic rumble at low RPM. They're not designed for speed or track performance. They're designed for long, open roads and the feeling of just being out there, moving. Touring motorcycle. If a cruiser is built for leisure, a touring bike is built for distance. These are large, heavy motorcycles designed to carry a rider, and often a passenger, across hundreds of miles in a single day, in comfort. They come with large windscreens to block wind, integrated luggage systems, heated seats, and sometimes infotainment screens that rival what you'd find in a car. The Honda Goldwing is the most famous example, a motorcycle so fully loaded with features that first-time riders sometimes mistake it for something from a science fiction film. Touring bikes are the choice of riders who don't just use a motorcycle for short trips. They use it to cross countries. Adventure motorcycle. Sometimes called ADV bikes, these are designed to handle both paved roads and off-road terrain. The idea behind them is simple. You shouldn't have to stop when the road does. They sit tall, with long suspension travel to absorb rough ground, wire spoke wheels built for durability, and engines tuned to handle everything from highway speeds to slow technical trail riding. The BMW GS series popularized this category in the 1980s, and today bikes like the Triumph Tiger, KTM Adventure, and Honda Africa Twin compete in the same space. Riders who own adventure bikes tend to take them seriously. These aren't just commuter bikes wearing off-road clothes. Many owners load them up and ride across continents. Dual sport motorcycle. A dual sport bike is closely related to an adventure bike, but it comes from a different starting point. Where adventure bikes are road bikes adapted for occasional off-road use, dual sports are dirt bikes made street legal. They're lighter, simpler, and more focused on off-road capability. They have the bare minimum needed to ride on public roads: a headlight, mirrors, turn signals, and a license plate, but their heart is on the trail. Bikes like the Honda CRF 300L or the Kawasaki KLX series are popular in this space. They're practical in a way that's hard to explain until you've needed to get somewhere that roads don't reach. Dirt bike. These are off-road only, and they're honest about it. No mirrors, no turn signals, no license plate bracket. Dirt bikes are built purely for performance on unpaved surfaces. motocross tracks, trails, sand, mud, and everything in between. They're lightweight, with long suspension travel and knobby tires that dig into loose ground. Two main disciplines use them: motocross, which involves racing on closed tracks with jumps and berms, and enduro or trail riding, which is more about navigating natural terrain over long distances. Brands like KTM, Husqvarna, and Yamaha dominate competitive off-road racing, though Honda and Kawasaki have strong presences too. Scrambler. The Scrambler is a style that goes back to the 1960s, when riders would take standard street bikes, raise the exhaust pipes to clear obstacles, fit knobbier tires, and head out onto unpaved paths on the weekend. It was a practical, improvised solution, not a factory concept. Over time, that improvised look became a look in itself. Today, modern scramblers from Ducati, Triumph, and Royal Enfield are designed to look like those modified bikes from decades ago, though they're built with modern engineering underneath. They sit somewhere between a street bike and a light off-roader, capable of gentle trail use, but primarily at home on city streets. Naked motorcycle. A naked bike is essentially a sport bike with its fairings removed. No aerodynamic bodywork covering the engine, frame, or mechanical components. Everything is exposed. The name comes from that visual openness. Without the fairings, the riding position shifts slightly more upright, making them more comfortable for city riding than a full sport bike. The engine, frame geometry, and performance remain aggressive, but the character feels more raw and direct. Bikes like the Kawasaki Z series, the Yamaha MT lineup, and the Ducati Monster are well-known examples. The Monster, introduced in 1993, is often credited with popularizing this style for a modern audience. Sport Tour. This type bridges the gap between sport performance and long-distance comfort. Sport Tours have the engine power and handling of a sport bike, combined with enough wind protection, luggage capacity, and rider comfort to make them viable for multi-day trips. They tend to be heavier and more refined than pure sport bikes, but far less bulky than full touring motorcycles. The Kawasaki Ninja 1000X and the Yamaha FJR 1300 are examples that have found loyal followings among riders who want a single bike that can handle both a winding mountain road and a 500-mile travel day without compromise. Cafe Racer. The Cafe Racer has a specific origin story. In post-war Britain, young riders would modify their motorcycles to race between cafes, usually covering a mile as fast as possible before a selected song on the jukebox finished playing. The bikes they built had low, flat handlebars called clip-ons, a streamlined single-seat hump at the rear, and a focus on stripping away anything that added weight. That culture faded, but the aesthetic never did. Today, cafe racers are built by custom shops and major manufacturers alike, with Triumph's Thruxton series being one of the most recognizable modern interpretations. They're more about style and heritage now than outright speed, but the spirit of the original idea still comes through. Electric motorcycle. These are the newest category, and they work differently at a fundamental level. No combustion engine, no fuel tank, and no gear changes in the traditional sense. Power comes from a battery pack and is delivered to the rear wheel through an electric motor. The experience of riding one is noticeably different. The acceleration is immediate and linear. The engine produces no sound beyond a quiet hum, and the overall mechanical feel is smoother than anything with a piston engine. Zero Motorcycles is one of the established names in this space, and Harley-Davidson launched its Livewire brand as a dedicated electric sub-label. Range and charging infrastructure remain the most discussed limitations, though both continue to improve as battery technology advances. Moped and scooter. These belong in the same conversation, though they're slightly different. Both use step-through frames, meaning you step through an open space rather than swinging your leg over a seat, and both are designed for practical urban mobility. Mopeds are the smaller and simpler of the two, originally defined by having a small engine and pedals. though modern ones rarely have pedals at all. Scooters tend to have automatic transmissions, larger wheels than mopeds, and enough engine size to handle city speeds comfortably. In parts of Southeast Asia and Southern Europe, scooters are the primary form of transportation for millions of people. In cities like London, Sydney, or New York, they're increasingly common as a practical answer to traffic and parking. Sidecar motorcycle. A sidecar motorcycle is a standard bike with a one-wheeled passenger compartment attached to its side, creating a three-wheeled vehicle. The addition of a sidecar changes the dynamics of riding completely. The bike no longer leans into corners and must be steered like a car in certain situations. Sidecars have a long history in military use, particularly in World War II, when they were used for reconnaissance and transport. Today they're rare, mostly built by specialty manufacturers or added to existing bikes as aftermarket conversions. They remain popular in parts of Eastern Europe, and in some rural communities in developing countries, they serve as practical transport for carrying goods or passengers. Three-wheeler. Different from a sidecar setup, a modern three-wheeler is a purpose-built vehicle designed from the ground up with three wheels. Usually two at the front and one at the rear. The Can-Am Spyder and the Polaris Slingshot are well-known examples. These vehicles sit in a regulatory gray area in many countries, sometimes classified as motorcycles and sometimes as something else entirely. They offer stability that two-wheeled bikes can't match, which makes them appealing to older riders or those returning to riding after an injury.